Welcome, dear viewers. For more exclusive, thrilling stories every week, join our membership. Sit back, relax, and sip your coffee. Enjoy. The first time I saw them roll into Tucker's Roadhouse on the outskirts of Elkins, I knew these weren't your average leather-clad road warriors. 5 of them, all riding identical matte black Harley Softails with no insignias, no club patches, nothing. Just sleek machines that barely made a sound when they pulled up. It was my 3rd night behind the bar. I'd only moved to Randolph County 3 weeks earlier, running from a life that had collapsed around me in Pittsburgh. Gambling debts, an ex-wife who'd emptied our joint accounts, and a drinking problem that had cost me my job at an accounting firm. West Virginia wasn't exactly my first choice, but my uncle owned this place and offered me a lifeline when nobody else would. "Watch those 5, Hank, the senior bartender, muttered as they entered. "They come in once a month. Remember the rules." I nodded like I understood, though the rules were precisely what had been confusing me since I'd started. Tucker's Roadhouse looked like any other roadside dive. Neon beer signs, pool tables with cigarette burns, a jukebox that seemed permanently stuck in 1982. But it operated under a bizarre code that everyone but me seemed to know instinctively. "Travis," a voice called. The tallest of the 5 bikers took a seat directly in front of me. His face was deeply lined, weather-beaten, but his eyes were startlingly clear, like ice water in January. "Whiskey, the one from beneath." I glanced at Hank, who made an almost imperceptible nod toward a trapdoor behind the bar. I'd assumed it led to a cellar or storage area, not something I'd need to access while serving. "And make it wet," the man added, his gaze never leaving mine. What the hell did that mean? Make it wet. Isn't whiskey already wet? "You're new," another one said, a woman with a silver streak running through otherwise jet-black hair. "Dugan's replacement?" "Yeah," I managed. "I'm Jeff Keener." She studied me for a moment, then turned to the others. "He doesn't know." "Then he learns tonight," said the first man, something like amusement flickering across his face. "Or he doesn't last the week." Hank slid a key across to me, old brass, heavy in my palm. "Under the floorboards," he whispered. "The bottle with the black wax seal. Don't touch it with your bare hands. Pour 4 fingers each, and remember Rule 3, never look them in the eye while they drink." I wanted to ask which rules were 1 and 2, but the expectant silence of the 5 strangers made it clear questions weren't welcome. As I bent down to unlock the trap door, I caught a glimpse of something etched into the wood beneath the bar. A list, worn from years of anxious fingers tracing its warnings. I should have left right then. Should have dropped the key, walked out the door, and hitchhiked anywhere else. But I needed this job. And as I was about to learn, mead is a dangerous thing in a place where rules are written in blood. The trapdoor opened with a groan that seemed almost human. Stale air wafted up, carrying the scent of damp earth and something sharper, metallic, like old pennies. I hesitated before descending the narrow wooden steps, my phone's flashlight illuminating a small cellar lined with wine racks, beer kegs, and a single shelf bolted to the far wall. On it sat 7 bottles, each sealed with different colored wax. The black-sealed one stood apart, its glass so dark it seemed to swallow light. Following Hank's instructions, I pulled a bar rag from my pocket, wrapped it around the bottle, and lifted it carefully. Back upstairs, the 5 bikers waited in perfect stillness. The woman with the silver streak watched me with something like amusement. The tall one, Travis, had removed his gloves, revealing hands covered in intricate tattoos, that seemed to shift when I wasn't looking directly at them. 4 fingers each, Hank reminded me quietly, while polishing a glass at the other end of the bar. I set out 5 shot glasses, keeping the bottle wrapped in the cloth. The liquid inside moved strangely, more viscous than regular whiskey, with an oily sheen that caught the dim bar lights. As I poured the first glass, I swore I felt the bottle pulse in my hand. "Remember Rule 3, Hank called out, his voice tense. "Right. Don't look them in the eye while they drink." I focused on the glasses as I poured each measure. The whiskey didn't flow like normal liquor. It reluctantly left the bottle in thick, slow rivulets, like blood from a wound that's almost clotted. "And make it wet," Travis repeated, tapping the bar with a silver ring that looked like a twisted serpent. Still unsure what that meant, I glanced at Hank, who suddenly pantomimed splashing water into the glasses. I grabbed the soda gun and added a small spray to each drink. The liquid hissed on contact, releasing a brief curl of vapor that smelled like burning leaves. "First time's always interesting," said a third biker, a wiry man with a jagged scar splitting his left eyebrow. "I'm Laszlo. That's Marnie, Travis you met, and the quiet ones are Decker and Wendell." Wendell, the smallest of the group but somehow the most intimidating, nodded slightly. He wore small round glasses that reflected the bar lights, making his eyes impossible to see. Decker was massive, his arms thick as fence posts, with a beard that reached the middle of his chest. "Pleasure," I managed, though pleasure was the furthest thing from what I felt. In perfect unison, they reached for their glasses. I remembered Rule 3 and looked down, focusing on wiping the bar top. From my peripheral vision, I saw them raise the glasses to their lips. Then the jukebox died, mid-song. The lights dimmed slightly, and all ambient noise in the bar, the murmur of conversations, the crack of pool balls, even the hum of the refrigerators, faded to nothing. I risked a glance up, careful to avoid their eyes. Their throats worked as they swallowed the strange whiskey, and for a brief, terrifying moment, I could see the liquid traveling down their necks, glowing faintly beneath their skin like tracer dye. The moment passed. They set down their empty glasses in sequence: Marnie, Travis, Laszlo, Decker, and finally Wendell. The jukebox kicked back on, the lights brightened, and the bar's background noise rushed back like a wave. "Good," Travis said, his voice somehow deeper than before. "He follows instructions." "Partial credit," Marnie corrected. "He still doesn't know the rules." "He will." Wendell spoke for the first time, his voice surprisingly gentle. "Tucker's always chooses well." I wanted to point out that my uncle had chosen me, not some mystical bar entity. But something told me to keep quiet. Laszlo slid a folded paper across the bar. "When you're ready, not before." I took it, feeling the thick parchment between my fingers. It was sealed with a drop of the same black wax as the bottle. "First, we drink. Then we conduct business," Travis announced, louder now. "Jeff Keener, we require normal service now. Beer, food, whatever these good people want." He gestured around to the other patrons, who I suddenly realized had been watching the whole exchange with a mixture of fear and fascination. As I moved to serve the other customers, Hank pulled me aside. "You did good," he whispered. "Better than Dugan, his first time." "What happened to Dugan?" I asked. Hank's face tightened. "Broke Rule 5. Don't ask about him again." I spent the next hour serving the usual suspects: no workers, long-haul truckers, locals who'd been coming to Tucker's for decades. All the while, the 5 bikers sat in silence, occasionally sipping beers I brought them, but mostly just watching. The folded paper burned in my pocket like a hot coal. When they finally stood to leave, Travis laid a $100 bill on the bar. "For your education," he said. "Read it tonight. Memorize it. Burn it before dawn." They filed out, their boots making no sound on the wooden floor. Through the window, I watched them mount their bikes. No headlights came on as they pulled away, 5 dark shapes dissolving into the night, like smoke. "Now," Hank said, coming to stand beside me, "you really start learning the job." The rest of the shift crawled by, every minute stretched by the weight of the folded paper in my pocket. Customers came and went. I poured drinks, wiped spills, broke up one minor shoving match by the pool tables. Normal bar stuff, but nothing felt normal anymore. "You did good tonight," Uncle Tucker told me as we closed up around 2 a.m. He rarely made appearances at the bar these days, spending most of his time in a small apartment upstairs, but he'd come down after the bikers left. "Those folks, they're important to the business." "Who are they?" I asked, sweeping broken peanut shells into a dustpan. Tucker exchanged glances with Hank. "Just some regulars. Been coming here since before I bought the place in '97. The math didn't add up. Travis didn't look much over 40, which would have made him a teenager when they started coming here. I kept that observation to myself. "You heading to the cabin?" Tucker asked, changing the subject. I nodded. Rather than paying me a full salary, Tucker was letting me stay in his hunting cabin about 2 miles up Bear Run Road. It was rustic, no internet, spotty cell service, and a temperamental generator, but it was private and rent-free. "Be careful driving back. Storms coming in from the mountains," he said, glancing toward the window where lightning occasionally illuminated the distant ridgeline of the Alleghenies. I left around 2:30, my ancient Toyota pickup groaning up the winding forest road. The first fat raindrops hit my windshield as I pulled up to the cabin. By the time I unlocked the door, the skies had opened up completely, rain hammering the metal roof like thousands of impatient fingers. Inside, I lit the kerosene lamp on the kitchen table and finally pulled out the folded paper. The black wax seal seemed to absorb the lamplight. I broke it open, my hands trembling slightly. Inside was a list written in careful, flowing script. Rules for the service of the wayward. 1. Never add water to their drinks unless requested to make it wet. 2. Never serve them from a bottle touched by sunlight. 3. Never look them in the eye while they consume what you serve them. 4. Never accept any gift from them except money, and never in any denomination other than American dollars. 5. If they ask about previous servers, say only, "They moved on to better opportunities." 6. If they arrive during the full moon, lock the cellar door and tell them inventory is low. 7. If blood is spilled in their presence, even a single drop, close the bar immediately and burn sage at all entrances. 8. If one arrives alone, do not serve them. Call Tucker immediately, regardless of the hour. 9. The bottle with the red wax seal is only to be opened if one of them is injured. Pour it over the wound, not into a glass. 10. Never invite them to return. They will come when they come. 11. If they leave anything behind, do not touch it with bare hands. Use the iron tongs behind the register to place it in the wooden box beneath the stairs. 12. Should they ever mention the crossing, direct them to the trail behind the dumpsters, and then take the rest of the night off. Go home, lock your doors, and tell no one what you heard. At the bottom, in different handwriting, my uncle's, I realized, was a final note. They are not our enemies, but neither are they our friends. They are travelers, and we are merely a way station. Remember this. I read the list 3 times, trying to make sense of it. Was this some elaborate hazing ritual? A joke at the new guy's expense? But I couldn't shake the memory of that strange whiskey moving underneath their skin, the way the sound had disappeared from the bar while they drank. Lightning flashed, and in that brief illumination, I saw something outside the window, a figure standing perfectly still in the pouring rain, watching the cabin. I doused the lamp immediately, my heart pounding. Crouching below the windowsill, I used my phone screen to check the time, 3:17 a.m. I waited 5 agonizing minutes before slowly raising my head to peek outside. Nothing, just rain and darkness. A branch scratched against the roof, making me jump. "Get a grip, Jeff," I told myself. "You're letting ghost stories and bar pranks get to you." I relit the lamp and reached for the paper again, but it was gone from where I'd left it on the table. My eyes darted around the small cabin until I spotted it on the floor near the wood stove, as if blown by a draft. As I bent to pick it up, I noticed something strange. Drops of black liquid seeping through the paper, though I'd spilled nothing on it. The drops grew, spreading like ink blooms, until they began forming words on the cabin's rough wooden floor. "We know you read it." The liquid continued to move, the message disappearing as new words formed. "Burn it now." A thunderclap shook the cabin, and I scrambled backward, dropping the paper. This wasn't a prank. This was something else entirely. I grabbed the box of matches by the wood stove, struck one with shaking hands, and touched it to the corner of the parchment. The paper didn't just burn, it screamed, a high, thin sound like tearing metal that set my teeth on edge and sent ice through my veins. The flame was unnaturally bright, tinged with blue and green. In seconds, the entire list was consumed, leaving nothing but a small pile of ash on the floor. The cabin went silent again, save for the drumming rain. I stared at the ash, afraid to touch it, afraid to move at all. My phone buzzed with a text message, making me nearly jump out of my skin. It was from an unknown number. "Well done. Rest now. More to learn tomorrow." I backed away until I hit the bed, unwilling to take my eyes off the pile of ash. Eventually, exhaustion overcame fear, and I fell into a restless sleep still fully clothed, the taste of copper in my mouth and the smell of something burning in my nostrils. I dreamed of motorcycles racing through forests, their riders' faces constantly shifting between human and something else, something with too many angles and depths where features should be flat. I dreamed of a road that went on forever, stretching into darkness, with Tucker's Roadhouse the only light for 1,000 miles in any direction. Morning came with watery sunlight filtering through the pine trees outside. The storm had passed. On the floor, no trace remained of the ash or the black liquid words. I might have convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing, if not for the text message still on my phone. I showered in the cabin's tiny bathroom, the water running rust-colored for the first minute before clearing. As I dressed, I noticed something on my wrist that hadn't been there the night before. A small mark, like a burn or brand, in the shape of what might have been a stylized key, or perhaps a road forking in 2 directions. My shift didn't start until 4 that afternoon. I had hours to convince myself to get in my truck and drive as far from Elkins as a tank of gas would take me. Instead, I found myself walking the property, following a narrow trail behind the cabin that I hadn't noticed before. It led to a small clearing where someone had arranged 7 stones in a circle. In the center was a motorcycle part, an old carburetor from a vintage Harley from the look of it, partially buried as if it had been there for decades. The name Tucker was scratched into its tarnished brass surface, but it wasn't my uncle's handwriting. It was the same flowing script as the rules. I drove into town before my shift, desperate for normalcy and human contact that didn't involve cryptic rules or supernatural motorcyclists. Elkins was a small city of about 7,000 people nestled in the Tigard Valley, a place where logging trucks rumbled through downtown, and everyone seemed to know everyone else's business. I parked near the Randolph County Courthouse, a stately stone building from 1894 that dominated the town square. The custard stand across the street offered some comfort food, a chili dog and chocolate shake that I ate while sitting on a bench, watching normal people live normal lives. "You're Tucker's nephew, right?" A woman's voice startled me out of my thoughts. She was maybe mid-30s, with curly auburn hair and a Tigard Valley Public Library staff shirt. "Jeff?" I confirmed, wiping chili from my mouth with a napkin. "Sorry, have we met?" "Diane Corley. I've been to the bar a few times." She sat down uninvited, keeping a careful distance. "You seem a little lost. Just new in town." "No." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You've got the look. You've seen them, haven't you? The wayward." I nearly choked on my milkshake. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do." She glanced around, lowering her voice. "They came to the bar last night. They always arrive after a new bartender starts, testing the waters." "Are you a regular at Tucker's?" I asked, trying to place her face. "Not anymore. I stay away when I can. But this town..." She gestured vaguely at the mountains surrounding us. "It's like a bowl. Things come in, but they don't always leave. Look, I appreciate the cryptic welcome wagon, but my brother worked at Tucker's. Before Dugan. Before two others whose names I never learned." Her voice hardened. "Tucker never talks about them, does he? Just says they moved on to better opportunities if anyone asks." Rule 5 echoed in my mind. I felt suddenly cold despite the warm afternoon. "What happened to your brother?" I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. "Lucas. His name was Lucas." She looked away. "Officially, he left town suddenly, abandoned his apartment, his car, but he would have never left his dog behind. Never." I didn't know what to say to that. He told me things near the end, about the bikers, the bottles in the cellar, the rules. She met my eyes again. "Did they give you the rules yet?" I nodded slowly. "Did you memorize them?" Another nod. "Good." She stood up. "Follow them." "Exactly. Don't improvise, don't get curious, and whatever you do, don't..." She stopped abruptly, looking over my shoulder. I turned to see Hank walking toward us, his face tense. "Jeff," he called. "Tucker's looking for you. Said your phone's off." It wasn't. I'd been checking it obsessively all day. "I should go," Diane said quietly. She pressed something into my hand, a small piece of paper with a phone number. "If things get strange, stranger than now." She walked away quickly, not looking back. Hank watched her go, his expression unreadable. "Making friends?" he asked as I approached. "Just being friendly to the locals." "Diane Corley isn't just a local." He started walking toward his truck, expecting me to follow. "She's got ideas about Tucker's, about your uncle." "Like what?" "Like her brother didn't just skip down." Hank unlocked his truck, an ancient Ford with more rust than paint. "Get in. Tucker wants you at the bar early today." The drive to Tucker's Roadhouse was tense and mostly silent. When we pulled into the gravel lot, I noticed something odd. The bar's sign was off, though it was nearly dusk, and only Tucker's pickup was parked outside. "We closed today?" I asked. "Special circumstances," Hank replied, which explained nothing. Inside, the bar was eerily quiet. No music, no TV sports, no clinking glasses or murmur of conversation. Just my uncle, sitting at the bar with a glass of something amber in front of him. Next to him was a wooden box I hadn't seen before, about the size of a shoebox, with intricate carvings along its edges. "Jeff," Tucker said, not turning around. "Glad you made it through the night." Was there a reason I wouldn't? First night after meeting them can be disorienting for some. He gestured to the stool beside him. "Have a seat. We need to talk before we open today." I sat, noticing that his glass contained ordinary whiskey, not the strange black waxed bottle's contents. "Did you burn the rules?" he asked. "Yes." "And the mark? Did you get one?" Instinctively, I touched my wrist where the strange symbol had appeared. Tucker nodded, seeming satisfied. "Good. That means they've accepted you as a potential keeper." "Keeper of what?" I demanded, my patience for cryptic commentary exhausted. Tucker sighed, suddenly looking every one of his 67 years. The crossing, the way station, the bar. He waved his hand in a gesture that encompassed the entire building. "All of it." "I'm just tending bar to pay off some debts, Uncle Tucker. I'm not keeping anything." He chuckled without humor. "That's what I said to my uncle when he brought me in, back in '97. He drained his glass. "But we don't really choose this life. It chooses us." "The wayward," I said, testing the word. "Who are they?" "Travelers," Tucker replied, echoing the note at the bottom of the rules. "From somewhere else, heading somewhere else. Tucker's is just a rest stop on their journey." "A journey where? They look like ordinary bikers." "Look harder next time," Hank interjected from behind the bar, where he was meticulously polishing glasses. "When they drink. When they think no one's watching." Tucker placed his hand on the wooden box. "This came for you this morning. One of them left it at the back door." My skin prickled. Rule 11. If they leave anything behind, do not touch it with bare hands. Use the iron tongs behind the register to place it in the wooden box beneath the stairs. "What's in it?" I asked. "Don't know. It's sealed with your name." Tucker slid the box toward me. "But before you open it, you need to understand something. Those rules aren't suggestions. They're survival tactics." Diane Corley mentioned her brother. Tucker's expression darkened. "Lucas broke Rule 12, followed them to the crossing when he shouldn't have. What happened after that?" He shook his head. "It wasn't their fault. They warned him." "So he's dead?" "No," Tucker said softly. "That would have been kinder." A cold weight settled in my stomach. "And Dugan? The bartender before me?" "Rule 7, Hank said. "Customer cut himself on broken glass during their visit. Dugan didn't close the bar, didn't burn the sage. Said it was just superstition." His hands paused in their methodical polishing. 3 days later, we found his truck at Bickle Knob Lookout. Driver's door open, keys in the ignition, his wallet on the seat. No blood, no signs of struggle. Just gone. The implications hit me like a physical blow. These weren't campfire stories or small-town superstitions. People had vanished, or worse, because of these so-called wayward. "Why tell me all this now?" I asked. "Why not warn me before they showed up?" "Would you have believed us?" Tucker countered. "Or would you have thought your alcoholic uncle and his bartender were pulling your leg?" He had a point. 24 hours ago, I would have laughed off the whole thing. "Besides," Tucker continued, "they needed to see you first, approve you in their way." He nodded toward the box, and now they have. With considerable apprehension, I examined the wooden box. My name was burned into the lid in that same flowing script from the rules. The carvings around the edges weren't just decorative, I realized, but symbols similar to the mark on my wrist. "Use these," Hank said, placing a pair of thick leather gloves beside me. "Just in case." I pulled them on and carefully lifted the lid. Inside, Nestled on a bed of what looked like dried herbs was an old key made of dark metal. Iron, maybe, or something older. It was surprisingly heavy when I picked it up, its teeth forming an unusual pattern I'd never seen on a modern key. "What does it open?" I asked. "Not what," Tucker corrected. "Where? It's a crossing key." He looked grim. They've never given one to a bartender before, not even me. Not in all these years. "What does that mean?" "It means," Hank said quietly, "they've got plans for you, kid." "We open in an hour," Tucker said, abruptly changing the subject. "Full moon tonight." Rule 6 flashed in my mind. If they arrive during a full moon, lock the cellar door and tell them inventory is low. "Will they come?" I asked. "They might. They don't follow human calendars or patterns, but if they do..." Tucker's eyes met mine. "Remember Rule 6. No matter how much they insist, no matter what they offer, don't open that cellar." "Why? What happens during a full moon?" Tucker looked away. "The veil gets thin. What's in those bottles gets stronger, and the wayward get hungry." A heavy silence fell over the bar, broken only by the distant rumble of thunder coming over the mountains again. "There's still time for you to leave," Tucker said finally. "Pack up, drive out of the county, probably even the state to be safe. I wouldn't blame you." The rational part of my brain screamed at me to take his offer. But something else, curiosity, stupidity, or maybe the strange pull of that symbol on my wrist, made me shake my head. "I'll stay," I said, surprising myself, "at least for now." Tucker nodded, not looking particularly relieved. "Then let's get ready to open. And Jeff, keep that key with you. Always." As I slipped the ancient key into my pocket, I could have sworn it grew warmer, almost seeming to pulse against my leg like a second heartbeat. Tucker's Roadhouse filled up quickly that night. Word had somehow spread through Elkins that we were having a full moon special, half-price drafts and free buffalo wings after 9 p.m. I hadn't seen any advertisements, but judging by the knowing looks Hank and Tucker exchanged, this was a deliberate strategy to pack the place. "Crowds keep them honest," Hank explained as we frantically filled drink orders. "They're less likely to cause trouble when there are lots of witnesses." "Unless trouble is what they want," Tucker added grimly, loading another tray of wings into the kitchen's ancient fryer. I kept one eye on the door and the other on my work, jumping at every rumble of motorcycles on the highway. The key in my pocket felt increasingly heavy as the night wore on, occasionally growing warm against my thigh like it was responding to something. Around 10:30, a group of coal miners from the nearby Sentinel mine came in, still dust-covered from their shift. They were regulars, according to Hank, good tippers who occasionally got rowdy but never dangerously so. They took over the pool tables, their laughter and the crack of balls providing a welcome soundtrack of normalcy. "Yo, Jeff," called one of them, a barrel-chested guy named Dawson. "When's Tucker going to get some decent tequila in this place?" "When hell freezes over," Tucker shouted from the kitchen doorway, to appreciative laughter. I was beginning to relax, starting to think we might make it through the full moon night without incident, when the front door swung open. It wasn't the 5 from the previous night. This was a lone rider, tall, lean, dressed in riding leathers that seemed to absorb rather than reflect the bar lights. Rule 8 thundered in my mind. If one arrives alone, do not serve them. Call Tucker immediately, regardless of the hour. The stranger took a seat at the far end of the bar, away from the other patrons. I caught Hank's eye, and he nodded slightly, moving casually toward the kitchen to alert Tucker. I approached warily, keeping a respectful distance. Up close, I could see the rider was a woman, though not Marnie from the previous night. Her helmet had left her short black hair flattened against her skull, and her eyes were hidden behind mirrored sunglasses despite the late hour. "Evening," I managed, my throat suddenly dry. "What can I get you?" She removed her gloves slowly, finger by finger, revealing hands covered in intricate tattoos similar to Travis's, symbols that seemed to shift when viewed peripherally. "Jeff Keener," she said, my name sounding strange in her mouth, like she was tasting each syllable. "The newest keeper of the crossing." "I'm just a bartender," I replied automatically. Her lips curved in what might have been a smile. "For now." She placed her hands flat on the bar. "I'll have what's kept beneath, made wet." My stomach twisted. I glanced toward the kitchen, hoping to see Tucker or Hank emerging, but the door remained closed. "I'm sorry," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We're out of stock on that particular item tonight." She went very still. "Are you refusing me service, Keeper?" It's a full moon," I explained awkwardly. "Inventory's low." She removed her sunglasses and I had to fight not to recoil. Her eyes weren't unusual in color or shape, a normal hazel, but they reflected the bar lights like an animal's would, twin points of brightness in the dim room. "The old rules," she murmured. "How quaint." She leaned forward slightly. "But I'm not here for a drink, Jeff Keener. I'm here about the key." My hand instinctively moved to my pocket where the iron key sat. "You don't know what you've been given," she continued. "The others are optimistic about your potential. I remain unconvinced." "Who are you?" I asked. "I am December." She said it like it should mean something to me. The last month, the darkest tide, the final crossing before the turn. Before I could respond, Tucker emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish rag. His face was carefully neutral, but I could see tension in every line of his body. "December," he acknowledged with a slight nod. "Been a while." "Tucker," she returned, equally cool. "Your establishment continues to exist. How persistent of it." "It's a full moon," Tucker said, the warning clear in his voice. "So I've been informed by your nephew." Her gaze returned to me. "Family business. How traditional." "What do you want, December?" Tucker asked bluntly. "To meet the new key bearer. To measure his worth." She reached into her jacket and pulled out what looked like an old brass compass. When she flipped it open, however, I saw it contained not a magnetized needle, but a small vial of dark liquid. "I brought a gift." Rule 4 flashed in my mind. Never accept any gift from them except money, and never in any denomination other than American dollars. "I can't accept that," I said. Her eyebrows rose slightly. "Smart boy, you've memorized your scripture well." She pocketed the compass again. "Very well. No gifts, but a warning, freely given. The key you carry opens doors that should remain closed. The others believe you're strong enough to resist the temptation." "I disagree." "What temptation?" I asked. December's smile widened, showing teeth that seemed just slightly too numerous, too perfectly white. "To go through, to see what lies beyond. Every keybearer faces it eventually." Her gaze shifted to Tucker. "Some resist better than others." Tucker's hand moved unconsciously to his left leg, which I suddenly realized was the one he always favored. A old injury, I'd assumed, but now I wondered. "Jeff's different," Tucker said firmly. "We shall see," December replied. She stood abruptly. "I've seen enough for now. When the others return, tell them I've made my assessment." She turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Jeff, check your cellar. I believe you'll find your inventory issue has resolved itself." A chill ran through me. The cellar door was locked. I'd checked it myself before opening, with the only key hanging behind the bar. December walked out without another word, leaving a strange silence in her wake that was broken by the sudden blare of the jukebox starting a new song. "What the hell was that about?" I asked Tucker when I was sure she was gone. "December's the most cautious of them," he said quietly. "She doesn't trust easily, especially not humans." "As opposed to what?" Tucker ignored the question. "Check the cellar door. Now." I hurried to the back, heart pounding. The heavy oak door leading to the cellar steps still had its padlock in place, seemingly untouched. But when I put my hand on it, the metal was ice cold, frosted over as if it had been submerged in liquid nitrogen. When I touched it, the lock simply crumbled to pieces in my hand. "Shit," I whispered, gingerly pushing the door open. Cold air billowed up from below, carrying that same metallic scent I'd noticed the previous night. I flipped on the light switch, revealing the narrow wooden stairs leading down. What I saw made my blood freeze. The cellar was exactly as I remembered it, with one significant difference. The shelf of wax-sealed bottles had changed. Where before there had been 7 bottles, now there were 12. 5 new ones had appeared, each sealed with silver wax and arranged in a perfect circle. And in the center of that circle, drawn in what looked horribly like dried blood, was the same symbol that had appeared on my wrist. I backed away, pulling the door closed and leaning against it. When I returned to the bar, Tucker took one look at my face and knew. "5 new ones?" he asked quietly. I nodded. "Silver wax?" Another nod. Tucker closed his eyes briefly. "It's starting, men. Sooner than I'd hoped." "What's starting?" I demanded, keeping my voice low so the customers wouldn't hear. "The crossing." Tucker's eyes were tired, resigned. "They're preparing for something big, Jeff. And for whatever reason, they've decided you're going to be part of it." The key in my pocket pulsed with warmth, almost like it was responding to Tucker's words. Or perhaps more disturbingly, like it was pleased. We closed early that night, Tucker's decision. He claimed a gas leak in the kitchen, apologized profusely, and offered free drinks the following evening to compensate. The customers grumbled, but left without much protest, except for Dawson and his mining buddies, who lingered at the pool tables. "Gas leak, my ass," Dawson said as he chalked his cue. "This about that weird chick on the bike?" Tucker's expression tightened. "You boys need to head home now." "Saw her talking to the new guy," Dawson continued, ignoring the warning in Tucker's voice. "Same crew as those freaks who come in once a month? The ones nobody talks about?" Hank moved to stand beside Tucker, arms crossed. "Dawson, don't make this a thing. Not tonight." Something in Hank's tone finally registered. Dawson sighed, racked his cue, and signaled to his friends. Fine. Just curious is all." As he passed me on his way out, he leaned in close. "Watch yourself, city boy. People who get mixed up with those riders tend to disappear." After they left, Tucker locked the door and flipped the closed sign. "We need to check the whole cellar," he said, limping toward the back. "Those 5 new bottles, they're part of something bigger." "The crossing?" I asked, following him. "That's part of it," Tucker confirmed. December wouldn't have shown up alone unless something important was happening. The 3 of us descended into the cellar, Tucker leading with a heavy flashlight that cast long shadows across the stone walls. The room seemed even colder than before, our breath fogging in the air despite the warm June night above us. Tucker approached the shelf with the bottles cautiously, examining the new arrivals without touching them. The silver wax seals gleamed in the flashlight beam like liquid mercury. "I've never seen silver-sealed ones," he murmured, "in 25 years. "What's in them?" I asked. "Nothing that should be here," Hank replied cryptically. Tucker knelt with difficulty to examine the symbol drawn on the floor. "This is old magic. older than the bar, older than this town. I touched the mark on my wrist unconsciously. It matches what they've put on me. The wayward sign. Tucker nodded. A crossroads between worlds. You keep talking about crossings and crossroads, I said, frustration mounting. What exactly are these people? Where are they crossing to or from? Tucker and Hank exchanged glances, engaging in some silent debate, before Tucker finally sighed. They're not people, Jeff. Not exactly. He stood, wincing as his bad leg protested. They were once, but they made deals at crossroads long ago, and now they travel between worlds, collecting others who've made similar bargains. What kind of deals? I asked, though I was starting to suspect. The usual kind, Hank said quietly. Power, wealth, love, revenge. Something wanted badly enough that a piece of yourself seems a fair price at the time. Souls, I said, the word falling into the cold air like a stone. You're talking about selling souls. That's the simplified version, Tucker admitted. It's more like they become something else. Part of the wayward, travelers on the roads between worlds, and certain places like Tucker's, sit at weak points between those worlds. Why here? I asked. Why this bar in the middle of nowhere? This land has always been a crossing point, Tucker explained. Long before the bar, before the town, even before white settlers. The Mingo tribes avoided this area, called it the Thin Place in their language. When my great-grandfather built the original trading post here in 1897, he had no idea. But he learned. He limped over to a section of wall that looked slightly different from the rest. Newer stonework. The original cellar was much larger, he continued. Extended under what's now the parking lot. We sealed off most of it in the 70s, after what happened to my father. What happened to him? I asked. He tried to destroy the crossing, Hank answered when Tucker remained silent. Thought he could fill it in, brick it up. They didn't take kindly to that. And your leg? I asked Tucker. Does that have something to do with them too? Tucker's face darkened. I was young, stupid, curious about where they went when they left here. One night I followed them to the crossing point behind the bar. Rule 12, I remembered. Should they ever mention the crossing, direct them to the trail behind the dumpsters, and then take the rest of the night off. Go home, lock your doors, and tell no one what you heard. I got farther than I should have, Tucker continued. Saw things no human was meant to see. Made it back, but he patted his leg. Left a piece of myself behind. Been in pain ever since. And Lucas Corley? I asked. Diane's brother? Same mistake. Followed them to the crossing. But he didn't make it back at all. Tucker's expression was grim. At least, not all of them did. A chill ran down my spine. What does that mean? Something wearing Lucas's face showed up at his apartment a week later, Hank explained. His girlfriend knew immediately it wasn't him. Called the police, but by the time they arrived, it was gone. Left a mess behind, though. Black liquid everywhere. Like oil, but not. I thought of the strange liquid that had seeped through the rules paper, forming words on my cabin floor. And the key? I asked, pulling it from my pocket. What does it open? Tucker's face paled in the harsh flashlight beam. Put that away. Not down here. Not with these. He gestured to the silver-sealed bottles. I returned the key to my pocket, where it pulsed with heat against my thigh. The key is for emergencies only, Tucker said firmly. It opens a way out or a way in, depending on how it's used. The wayward have never given one to a bartender before. Never. So why me? That's what worries me, Tucker admitted. They must have some purpose for you, something they haven't revealed yet. Our conversation was interrupted by a sound from above. Something heavy dragging across the bar floor. We froze, listening. The bar was locked, secured. No one should have been up there. "Stay here," Tucker whispered, heading for the stairs. "Like hell," I replied, following close behind with Hank on my heels. We emerged from the cellar to find the bar in darkness. The lights we'd left on were now off, the only illumination coming from the neon beer signs in the windows. Their colored glow cast the room in surreal hues of blue and red. In that strange light, a figure stood by the jukebox, its back to us. Too tall to be human, with limbs that seemed too long for its torso, it moved with a jerky, unnatural rhythm as it flipped through the jukebox selections. Music suddenly blared, Leonard Skynerd's Simple Man, and the figure swayed in a grotesque parody of dancing. "Who's there?" Tucker called, his voice admirably steady. The figure stopped moving but didn't turn around. "Who's there?" it repeated in Tucker's exact voice. "Who's there? Who's there?" Each repetition distorted further until it became an inhuman jumble of sounds. Tucker raised his flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness to illuminate the figure. It wasn't one of the wayward. It wasn't anyone I recognized. Its body seemed constructed of black liquid, the same substance that had seeped through the rules paper, flowing and shifting constantly like animated oil, roughly held in human form. When it finally turned, where a face should have been was only a smooth, reflective surface like black glass. But as we watched in horror, the surface rippled and features began to form. My features mimicking my expression of shock. "Jeff Keener," it said in my voice, perfect, down to the nervous tremor. "Keeper of the key, opener of ways." The key in my pocket became painfully hot. I yanked it out, nearly dropping it as it glowed with a dull red light. The creature's attention fixed on the key. Its not quite my face melted away, reforming into something more alien. A swirling vortex of darkness with pinpricks of light like distant stars. "The door wants opening," it said, its voice now a chorus of whispers. "The wayfarers grow restless, the bottles fill, the crossing widens." "What the hell is that thing?" I hissed to Tucker. "A messenger," he replied grimly. "They send them ahead sometimes. Never inside the bar before, though. That's new." The creature extended an arm that stretched impossibly across the room, reaching for the key. I stumbled backward, nearly falling. "Not yours to take," Tucker snapped, stepping between us. The creature's head tilted at an impossible angle. "The bones remember you, Tucker. The crossing remembers what it took from you." Its liquid body rippled, and suddenly Tucker cried out, clutching his bad leg as it buckled beneath him. "Stop!" I shouted, anger overriding fear. "Leave him alone!" The key in my hand pulsed in time with my racing heart. Acting on instinct, I held it up like a weapon. The effect was immediate and startling. The creature recoiled, its form losing cohesion, black liquid splashing onto the floor. "The key bearer commands," it hissed, voice distorting. "We obey. For now." With a sound like water circling a drain, it collapsed into a puddle of darkness that slithered across the floor with purpose, disappearing beneath the front door. Tucker sat heavily on the nearest bar stool, still gripping his leg. "That was too close," he gasped. "How did it get in?" "The bar is protected." "The new bottles," Hank suggested, helping Tucker to his feet. "Silver seals. Maybe they changed the rules. Or maybe having the key here does." Tucker looked at me with new concern. "You need to be careful with that thing, Jeff. More careful than I realized." The key had stopped glowing but remained uncomfortably warm in my palm. I tucked it away again, increasingly aware of its weight, its presence, its power. "We need to call them," Tucker decided. "All of this, the bottles, December showing up alone. That messenger, something's happening, and we need answers." "Call who?" I asked. "The wayward?" How do you even do that? Tucker limped behind the bar and pulled out an ancient rotary phone I hadn't noticed before. We don't call them. We call the others like us. Others? You think Tucker's is the only way station? Hank asked with a humorless laugh. There are crossings all over, and there are keepers at each one. Keepers, I repeated, the title December had used for me. So there's like a network of supernatural bartenders? Not just bartenders, Tucker said as he dialed a number from memory. Hotel managers, gas station attendants, lighthouse keepers, anyone who maintains a place where the veil between worlds is thin. As he spoke into the phone, using terms and phrases I didn't understand, I walked to the window, peering out into the darkness. The parking lot was empty except for our vehicles, but something moved at the edge of the forest that crowded close to the building. Shapes that might have been deer or men on all fours, their eyes reflecting the neon lights like December's had. The key throbbed in my pocket like a second heartbeat, and the mark on my wrist began to itch and burn. Whatever role the Wayward had planned for me, it was beginning to feel less like chance and more like fate, or something darker. Outside, a motorcycle engine started up, though I could see no bike. The sound circled the building once, twice, 3 times, before fading into the distance. I had the terrible feeling it would be back soon. Dawn broke over the mountains as we finished securing the bar. Tucker had made several calls, speaking in that same cryptic terminology with people identified only by location. Charleston, Blue Ridge, Shenandoah. From his side of the conversations, I gathered that similar disturbances were happening at other crossings throughout Appalachia. "They're coming," Tucker announced, hanging up the phone after his final call. "Representatives from 3 other stations. They'll be here by nightfall." "Is that good or bad?" I asked, exhaustion making it difficult to process anything more. "Necessary," Tucker replied. "What's happening here isn't normal, even by our standards. The silver bottles, the messenger inside the bar, December's appearance, and most of all, that key." He pointed to my pocket. "We need help figuring out what it all means." Hank had been mopping up the black residue left by the messenger, wearing thick rubber gloves and using bleach. "Should be safe to leave now," he announced. "Though I wouldn't come back alone if I were you, Jeff." "I'll drive you to the cabin," Tucker offered. "Pack whatever you need. You're staying in the apartment upstairs until we sort this out." Too tired to argue, I nodded. The drive up Bear Run Road was silent, tension humming between us. When we reached the cabin, Tucker waited in the truck, engine running, while I gathered my meager possessions. I was stuffing clothes into my duffel bag when I noticed it. A folded piece of paper on my pillow that hadn't been there before. The same heavy parchment as the rules list, but unmarked by any wax seal. With trembling fingers, I unfolded it. In flowing script, it read, "The key fits doors both ways. When you decide to use it at the hollow tree where the old carburetor rests. Midnight is best. Come alone or not at all." It was signed simply, T. Travis, I assumed. I stuffed the note into my pocket alongside the key, which pulsed once as if in recognition. Back at Tucker's Roadhouse, I settled into the small apartment above the bar, essentially one room with a kitchenette, bathroom, and a bed that had seen better days. Tucker rarely used it anymore, preferring his actual house a few miles away, but kept it for nights when weather or exhaustion made driving dangerous. "Try to get some sleep," he suggested. "Tonight's going to be complicated." Sleep came surprisingly easily, though my dreams were troubled. Highways that stretched into impossible distances. Motorcycles whose riders shifted between human and something else with every blink. And always that key, growing larger until it was a doorway I both feared and longed to step through. I woke to voices downstairs, unfamiliar ones mixed with Tucker's and Hank's. Checking my phone, I saw it was just past 6 in the evening. I'd slept nearly 12 hours. After splashing water on my face and changing into fresh clothes, I headed downstairs. Tucker's Roadhouse remained closed to the public, the parking lot empty, except for 4 vehicles I didn't recognize: a battered Jeep Wrangler, an ancient station wagon, a pristine 1970s Cadillac, and a modern electric pickup. Inside, 4 strangers sat with Tucker and Hank around a table in the center of the room. They fell silent as I entered, all eyes turning to me. "Here he is," Tucker said, gesturing for me to join them. "Jeff, meet the other keepers." They introduced themselves one by one, each more unusual than the last. Grace Chen, a small, elderly woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, ran a gas station and diner at Hawk's Nest, near the New River Gorge. "Oldest crossing in West Virginia," she said matter-of-factly. "Native tribes used it for vision quests before Europeans ever set foot here." Malcolm Webb, a black man in his 50s with a professor's bearing, managed a small roadside museum off the Blue Ridge Parkway in Virginia. "We catalog artifacts that come through from the other side," he explained. "Items the wayward leave behind, intentionally or not." Sarah Kelly, younger than the others, maybe 30, with a sleeve of tattoos and a perpetual squint. She maintained a fire tower lookout in the Monongahela National Forest. "Highest crossing point east of the Mississippi," she said. "They come through on full moons usually." And finally, Elias Dvorak, who looked like a Hollywood casting director's idea of a mountain man, burly, bearded, dressed in flannel despite the June heat. He ran a hunting lodge near Seneca Rocks. "Been in my family 5 generations," he rumbled, "longer than any other station." "Show them," Tucker instructed me, nodding toward my pocket. Reluctantly, I pulled out the key. The reaction was immediate. Sharp intakes of breath, widened eyes, and in Grace's case, a rapid string of what sounded like protective prayers in Chinese. "A crossing key," Malcolm whispered, leaning forward to examine it without touching. "I've only seen drawings in the old records." "Where did you get this?" Elias demanded. I explained about the wooden box left by the wayward, their apparent approval of me as a keeper, and the strange encounter with December. "And the mark?" Sarah asked. "Did you get one of those too?" I pushed up my sleeve to reveal the symbol on my wrist. Sarah immediately did the same, showing a similar but notably different mark on her forearm. "Each crossing has its own signature," she explained. "Mine looks like a tower. Yours is clearly a key." "The question," Grace interjected, "is why they've chosen you, a newcomer, for this particular honor. These keys aren't given lightly. The last recorded keybearer was in 1943, and that ended." She trailed off, exchanging glances with the others. "Ended how?" I prompted. "Badly," Malcolm supplied. "The keeper used it incorrectly. Opened a door that should have remained closed." "What happened to him?" "Parts of him were found in 3 different states," Elias said bluntly. "Not all at once, either. Pieces kept showing up for years." A cold knot formed in my stomach. I thought of the note hidden in my pocket. The key fits doors both ways. When you decide to use it at the hollow tree where the old carburetor rests. Midnight is best. Come alone or not at all. The silver-sealed bottles are the immediate concern. Tucker redirected the conversation. "None of us have seen them before." "Not true," Grace corrected. "My grandfather wrote about them in his journals. Silver seals appear only before a major crossing event." "What kind of event?" Hank asked. "A mass migration," Grace said gravely. "The wayward bringing others through, those who've made bargains but haven't yet been collected." "How many are we talking about?" I asked. Dozens, Grace replied. Maybe hundreds. And that's bad because, I pressed. Because each crossing weakens the barriers between worlds, Malcolm explained. Small crossings, 1 or 2 travelers, barely leave a mark. But many at once. It creates instability. Things can slip through that aren't supposed to, like that messenger you encountered. And if the barriers weaken enough, Sarah added, they might not recover. The crossings could become permanent tears, which would be very bad for those of us who enjoy reality as it currently exists, Elias concluded dryly. Tucker leaned forward, hands clasped on the table. So what do we do? The keepers exchanged glances, some silent communication passing between them before Malcolm spoke. Traditionally, only 2 options exist when a crossing becomes unstable, he said carefully. Reinforcement or closure. Reinforcement requires artifacts from both sides, Grace elaborated. Difficult to obtain, complex to implement, but less dangerous. And closure? I asked. Permanent, Elias said flatly. The crossing is sealed, becoming inactive, but it requires significant sacrifice. What kind of sacrifice? I asked, though I suspected I already knew. A key bearer, Sarah said quietly. The key and its holder become the lock and seal. All eyes turned to me again, and the weight of what they were implying settled in my chest like a stone. That's not happening, Tucker said firmly. We're not sacrificing my nephew to close a crossing that's existed safely for centuries. No one's talking about sacrificing anyone, Malcolm assured him, but we need to understand why the Wayward gave Jeff the key now, just as they're preparing for a mass crossing. It can't be coincidence. I thought again of the note in my pocket. Should I tell them? Something held me back. Perhaps the key itself, which seemed to grow warmer whenever the discussion turned toward using it. Has anyone actually asked the Wayward what they're planning? I suggested. Directly, I mean. The keepers stared at me like I'd proposed setting the bar on fire. We don't ask them anything, Elias said. We maintain the stations, follow the rules, and stay out of their business. That's worked so far, I countered. But things are changing, right? Maybe the old approaches won't cut it anymore. A thoughtful silence fell over the group. He has a point, Sarah finally said. They chose him for a reason. Gave him the key for a reason. Maybe it's time for a more direct approach. It's dangerous, Grace warned. The Wayward don't think like humans anymore. Their motivations, their understanding of consequences, it's alien to us now. More dangerous than doing nothing while they plan something that could tear reality apart, I challenged. The conversation might have continued, but it was interrupted by the unmistakable sound of motorcycles approaching. Not 1 or 2, but many, their engines creating a thunder that vibrated through the floorboards. Tucker moved to the window, pushing aside the blinds to peer out. His face paled. They're here, he said. All of them. We joined him at the window. In the dying light of sunset, a procession of black motorcycles filled the highway leading to Tucker's roadhouse. Dozens of them, their riders indistinguishable from one another in the gloom. I count 37, Malcolm said quietly. More than I've ever seen in one place. Jeff. Tucker turned to me, his expression grave. Whatever's happening, you're at the center of it now. That key isn't just a key, it's a decision. And I think you're about to be asked to make it. The key burned in my pocket like a coal, and the mark on my wrist throbbed in time with the approaching engines. Whatever door this key was meant to open or close, the time for choosing was rapidly approaching. The motorcycles circled Tucker's roadhouse 3 times before stopping, forming a perfect ring around the building. Their headlights remained off, yet each bike gleamed in the twilight as if illuminated from within. "They're not entering," Hank observed. "That's new." "They're waiting," Grace said. "For him." She nodded toward me. As if confirming her words, the riders dismounted in perfect unison, but remained beside their bikes. In the center of the parking lot, a space had been left empty, forming what looked disconcertingly like a stage or arena. "What do they want?" I asked, my mouth dry. "Only one way to find out," Tucker replied grimly. "You can't seriously expect him to go out there alone," Sarah protested. "He won't be alone," Tucker said, limping toward the gun rack behind the bar. He pulled down an ancient shotgun, checking that it was loaded. "I'll go with him." "Weapons won't help against them," Malcolm warned. "You know that." "Makes me feel better anyway." Tucker shrugged, then looked at me. "Your call, Jeff. We can wait them out, or we can see what they want." The note in my pocket felt like it was burning a hole through the fabric. I knew what they wanted. For me to use the key at midnight, at the hollow tree. But I couldn't explain how I knew without revealing I'd been keeping secrets. "I'll talk to them," I decided. "But not out there. This is your bar, Tucker. If they want to talk, they can come inside and follow the rules like everyone else." A smile ghosted across my uncle's face. "That's the keener stubbornness. Your father would be proud." "My father was a drunk who abandoned us," I replied flatly. "But thanks for the sentiment." I moved to the front door and unbolted it, swinging it wide open. Standing in the threshold, not outside but not fully inside either, I called out to the assembled riders. "If you've come for drinks, we're closed for a private event. If you've come to talk, then come inside and talk. But I'm not playing whatever game this is." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, from their perfect circle, 5 riders detached and approached the door. Travis, Marnie, Laszlo, Decker, and Wendell from my first night. As they drew closer, I could see something was different about them. Their movements were more fluid, less human somehow, and their features seemed to blur at the edges when viewed directly. "The key-bearer has spine," Travis remarked, his voice carrying easily across the distance. "Good. He'll need it." They stopped a few feet from the door, just outside the threshold. "May we enter, Keeper?" Marnie asked formally. I remembered the rules about invitations. "You may enter to conduct business, but I'm not inviting you to return." A smile flickered across her face. Well remembered. The 5 of them stepped inside, and I felt something shift in the air, like a pressure change before a storm. Behind me, I heard Grace murmuring something that might have been a prayer. "The others," Travis said, gesturing to the keepers. "An unexpected complication." "Friends of the family," Tucker replied, the shotgun resting casually in his arms. "What do you want with my nephew?" "The question is backward," Wendell said, his small round glasses reflecting the bar lights. "It's what your nephew wants with us." "I don't want anything with you," I said. "You're the ones who gave me this key. You're the ones planning whatever this is." I gestured toward the window and the motorcycles beyond. "The key was always yours," Laszlo said. "We merely returned it to you." "That's not possible," I countered. I'd never seen it before in my life. "Not in this life," Decker rumbled, speaking for the first tone since they'd entered. His voice was like stones grinding together. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room as I processed the implication. "Jeff," Malcolm said carefully from behind me, "the wayward exist outside normal time. They experience it differently than we do." "The crossing grows thin," Travis continued, ignoring the interruption. "Those who made bargains must be collected. The accounts must be settled." "And what does that have to do with me?" I demanded. The 5 exchanged glances before Marnie spoke. The door needs a keeper who can open and close it at will. For centuries, the passage has been unregulated, unstable. Dangerous, added Wendell. For everyone, Travis emphasized. Your world and others. So you want me to what exactly? Be some kind of supernatural doorman? The absurdity of it almost made me laugh despite the tension. You would control the flow, Marnie explained. Decide who passes and when. No more random crossings, no more weakening of the veil. And why would I agree to that? Because the alternative is worse, Travis said simply. The barriers thin, the crossings multiply. What you call reality becomes permeable. And if that happens, Laszlo added, there are things far worse than us waiting to cross over. Grace stepped forward. The Wayward have never offered this kind of arrangement before. Why now? Why him? Because the key returned to this world, Decker said. It chosen. The key is an object, I protested. It doesn't choose anything. Travis smiled, showing teeth that seemed too numerous, too sharp. Does your heart choose to beat? Does your blood choose to flow? Some things have their own will, their own purpose. Read the note, Marnie said suddenly. The one you've been hiding. I froze. The other keepers looked at me in confusion. What note? Tucker demanded. Slowly, I withdrew the folded paper from my pocket. As if responding to its presence, the key grew hot enough that I had to pull it out too, holding both items in my open palm. He's been keeping secrets, Elias observed disapprovingly. Self-preservation, Travis countered, a healthy instinct. I unfolded the note and read it aloud. The key fits doors both ways. When you decide to use it at the hollow tree where the old carburetor rests. Midnight is best. Come alone or not at all. You weren't going to tell us about this? Tucker asked, hurt evident in his voice. I didn't know what to make of it, I admitted. And something told me to keep it to myself. The key, Wendell nodded. It has its own protections. And this hollow tree? Malcolm asked. Where is it? Behind my cabin, I said. There's a clearing with stones arranged in a circle, a carburetor buried in the center with Tucker scratched into it. Tucker's face paled. That was my father's, from his Harley. After he disappeared, I buried it there as a kind of memorial. A marker, Travis corrected, for the crossing. Outside, one of the waiting motorcycles revved its engine, then another. Soon all were roaring in unison, creating a wall of sound that rattled the windows. They grow impatient, Laszlo observed. Midnight approaches, Marnie added. You must decide. Decide what? I asked, though I suspected I knew. Whether to use the key, Travis said. To take control of the crossing, to become its true keeper. And if I refuse, then the crossing remains uncontrolled. The barriers continue to weaken. Eventually, they fail completely. His expression was solemn. Your world and others bleed together. The results would be unpleasant. For everyone. There has to be another option, Sarah insisted. The old texts mention reinforcement. Temporary measures, Wendell interrupted. The crossing needs a keeper with the key. It has always needed one. So why hasn't there been one before now? I challenged. There was, Decker said. Long ago, but he was lost. The key with him. Until now, Travis added, his gaze fixed on me. Until you. The motorcycles outside fell silent all at once, creating a vacuum of sound more disturbing than the noise had been. You have until midnight to decide, Marnie said. We will wait. And if I say no? I asked. Then we collect those we came for and depart, Travis said. The crossings continue as they have. The barriers weaken further. And eventually, something else comes through. Something that doesn't bother asking permission. With that, the 5 turned in perfect unison and walked out the door. They returned to their motorcycles but didn't mount them, standing in the gathering darkness like silent sentinels. "Well," Tucker said after they'd gone, "that was informative." "And terrifying," Sarah added. "Jeff," Malcolm approached me cautiously. "May I?" He gestured to the key still in my palm. I nodded, and he peered at it closely without touching it. "The design is ancient," he observed. "Pre-colonial, but with European influences. A hybrid, like so much in this region." "What do you think they're really after?" I asked the assembled keepers. "This seems too convenient." "The Wayward don't think like us anymore," Grace reminded me. "Their priorities, their concept of time and consequence, it's alien now. But they've never lied to us, even when the truth is unpleasant." "So you think I should do it? Use the key, become this crossing keeper?" "I think," Elias said carefully, "that refusing outright would be unwise. Whatever's happening, you're now central to it." I checked the time on my phone. 10:43 p.m., just over an hour to decide. "I need air," I announced, heading for the back door that led to a small porch behind the kitchen. To my surprise, only Tucker followed me out. The night air was cool and damp with the promise of rain. In the distance, heat lightning illuminated the ridgeline of the mountains. "I'm sorry," he said after a moment. "I never wanted you mixed up in all this. When I offered you the job, I thought they'd leave you alone." "Why did you offer me the job?" I asked suddenly. "We've barely spoken in years. Why reach out now?" Tucker sighed heavily. "Your father asked me to watch over you before he left. I failed at that for a long time. When I heard things had gone sideways for you in Pittsburgh, it seemed like a chance to make good on an old promise. You've been in contact with my father?" The revelation stung more than I expected. "No." Tucker shook his head. "Not since he left, but some promises stick with you." In the silence that followed, I felt the key pulse in my hand, like it was alive, eager. The mark on my wrist throbbed in rhythm with it. "Whatever you decide," Tucker said finally, "I've got your back. We all do." As if to underscore his words, thunder rolled across the valley, and the first heavy raindrops began to fall. Through the downpour, I could see the Wayward still standing by their motorcycles, utterly still, utterly patient, waiting for midnight, and my decision. The door behind us opened, and Malcolm stepped out. "It's time. We should head to the crossing site, if that's what you've decided." I looked at the key once more. In the flash of lightning, it seemed to gleam with an inner light, not reflecting the storm, but somehow containing it. "Let's go," I said, making my decision. "I want to see this hollow tree." It's been 6 months since that night at the hollow tree. 6 months since I inserted the ancient key into a lock that shouldn't have existed. A small iron keyhole embedded in the living wood, visible only when the moonlight hit it just right. The door that opened wasn't physical, not exactly. It was more like reality itself folded back, revealing a road that stretched into impossible distances, bordered by landscapes that shifted between recognizable mountains and somewhere else. Somewhere with different stars, different physics, different rules. The Wayward rode through that opening, dozens of them, their motorcycles transforming as they crossed the threshold, becoming sleeker, darker, somehow more real than anything in our world. Behind them came others on foot, men and women with hollow eyes and relieved expressions, the ones who had made bargains long ago and were finally being collected. I stood at that threshold for what felt like hours, the key burning in my hand, watching as Travis directed the procession with the authority of a border guard. When the last traveler passed through, he approached me. "The door remains yours to open and close," he said. "We will return when it's time." "What if I don't want this responsibility?" I asked. "The key chose you," he replied simply. "Some burdens cannot be refused, only carried." With that cryptic statement, he rode through the doorway. I turned the key, and reality stitched itself back together, leaving only an ordinary hollow tree in a clearing of 7 stones. Life at Tucker's Roadhouse has settled into a new normal since then. I tend bar 6 nights a week. I serve beer to loggers and coal miners. I change kegs and wipe down tables and break up the occasional fight. Ordinary work. Except for the 12th night, when the moon is dark. On those nights, we close early. Tucker, Hank, and I sit at the bar with the bottle of black-waxed whiskey between us, waiting. They always arrive exactly at midnight. Travis, Marnie, Laszlo, Decker, and Wendell. Sometimes others, though never December again. They drink what I pour them, and I still remember to look away as they consume it. They never speak of the crossing or the key directly, but they leave notes for me, written in that same flowing script, detailing who might be coming through next time, which worlds need connection or separation. The other keepers call me sometimes, Grace, Malcolm, Sarah, and Elias. We compare notes, share information. They've become something like friends, bound by a secret, too strange to share with anyone else. Diane Corley still avoids the bar. I don't blame her, but I left a note for her at the library. Just 3 words. "He's at peace." I don't know if it's true, but I hope it gives her some closure. I saw Lucas, or what used to be Lucas, on the other side that night. He wasn't suffering, just different now. Changed in ways I still don't have words for. The mark on my wrist has spread, the symbol growing more intricate each time I use the key. Tucker says that's normal, that it's a record of my service as keeper. Sometimes it aches before storms, or when the veil between worlds grows thin. I still don't understand why the key chose me, what connection I have to this crossing that stretches back farther than I can comprehend. Maybe I'll learn in time. The wayward measure their existence in centuries, not years. I suspect I've only seen the beginning of whatever path I've started down. For now, I tend bar. I follow the rules. I keep the key close, hidden, but never forgotten. And on those special nights when the crossroads between worlds needs its keeper, I walk up the mountain to a hollow tree and open doors that most people will never know exist. My name is Jeff Keener. I'm a bartender at a biker bar in West Virginia. And sometimes I'm something else entirely.